So we've got these sizes, and as soon as you start looking at them, it just almost begs the question, well, what happens in between those sizes, or when you're right on the cusp? And what happens on the cusp typically is a degree of confusion, tension, some perhaps conflict among individuals and groups in the congregation, but even within individuals and groups, about who are we going to be, what kind of church are we, and what's next, what would be healthy development for us, what would we mean by growth, and would it be primarily numerical or would it be some other kind of growth, spiritual growth or growth in service to our surrounding community, organizational growth, clarifying our processes, the way we work together, creating safer church environments and so forth. All of those could legitimately be called growth. So in between sizes, the question about what's next, what kind of church are we now, what kind of church do we want to be, or at best are we called to be, those conversations really heat up in between sizes. And every time I would talk about this and talk about that time of growing tension and conversation, congregations would say, oh boy, that's us, that's what we're experiencing. You must have been at our board meeting, because that's exactly what happens here. And once people have said that, they were always often coming back with the next question, which is, so what do we do if we've hit the boundary between sizes and we still want to grow? We still feel we have the potential to grow, or we still feel we have the call to grow numerically within the communities where we're located. Well, I didn't know the answer to that question, so I started to read more about these kinds of transitions and to talk with leaders in more and more congregations who were experiencing these in-between tensions, these in-between zones. And over time, it became apparent that one of those size transitions, the zone between two of those sizes, seemed even more difficult than the rest. And it's the one that, using Rothage's vocabulary, we call the pastoral to program size transition. Somewhere between about 150 and 250 in average attendance, churches typically will plateau out, even if they're in a growing community, and even if they still have enough space. Now that's the surprising one for many churches. It's fairly easy for people to understand physical space limitations, although there is still mental resistance even to admitting that sometimes. But to say, well, we've got plenty of seating, we've got plenty of room in our religious education program, we've even got plenty of parking, but our attendance is flat. Why is that? And what we know is that that has something to do with social space, not just physical space. I want to pause for a minute to explain how I think about numbers in relation to these issues. Any numbers that I am mentioning are meant to be a year-round average and meant to include all the regular weekly Sabbath services, even if one of them is on Saturday night or one is on Sunday night, all of those combined. And it's meant to include everybody on the premises for the Sabbath experience. So I do count children and teachers in a religious education program in one of those time frames, even if they don't come upstairs into the main worship service. They're often in the basement, that's why I say it that way. So if you count that way, then it's this 150 to 250 zone that I would characterize as the transition zone, and the hardest of the transition zones. The needs of congregations in that particular transition became more and more of a focus of my learning and research and work with congregations. And eventually that resulted in a collection of resources called Raising the Roof. Originally, this material was designed for congregations with three characteristics. They were in or near this transition zone. They were located in a community where there was some opportunity for numerical growth. We know that a great deal of the experience of numerical growth and decline in congregations of all kinds can be correlated with what are called contextual factors. That is to say, what's going on in the surrounding community and in the wider culture, the broader cultural movements of receptivity toward different styles of religious involvement and so forth. So I had in mind particularly congregations that were actually experiencing some pressure from their community context to grow. And I was also thinking of congregations that had some internal sense of call, some sense of mission or purpose that would lead them to say, it may be right for us to step up to another scale of ministry for the sake of our purpose or mission, step up to another size category. And for that subset of congregations, these Raising the Roof resources were meant to help them answer basically two questions about the transition. What would it look like, and what would it take to actually make it through in an effective way? Now, I've known for a long time that this pastoral to program transition is a hard one, but as time goes on, I get a deeper and deeper appreciation both of how hard it really is and why that might be.